Congratulations, Five Nights at Freddy's. You're officially 1 decade old. It's been a really long time since I was able to cover anything regarding Five Nights at Freddy's. That video is now 2 years old, and I was pretty content with that being the last Five Nights at Freddy's video I would make, at least until the 10-year anniversary came out, and honestly impressed me a lot with some of the content that was dropped during that week. It was honestly really cool to see all these cool new FNaF themed projects being shown off here. It was honestly one of the best anniversaries I think any game has ever had in general. So for the final Five Nights at Freddy's video I ever decide to make, I want to celebrate FNaF, going through every single year, talking about everything that FNaF has ever released, and talking about the content that was released for each anniversary. Oh, and more than likely, I'm sure you're probably going to notice that this video is probably going to be releasing after the 10-year anniversary. Hell, I'm honestly willing to bet that it's probably going to release after the 11th anniversary, so hopefully future me has put in some kind of content after the 10-year anniversary to make up for it. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of all of this, also feel free to follow me on Blue Sky because I'm not posting to Twitter anymore. And feel free to drop by and say hi in Nitrosity's Dustbin, my official Discord server, where we treat Doki Doki Literature Club very seriously. And then subscribe, because then I get to make totally more awesome mascot horror content for you little children out there, so I can make as much money as possible. Okay, without further ado, let's just get on with it. Wow, 2015. Been a long time. Anyway, did you know that Bloodborne was released in 2015 for the PS4? Yep, my brain's about to explode. Anyway, this year, Five Nights at Freddy's had, well, probably the most amount of games released, at least in the span of a year anyway. That, of course, being the first 4 entries of the entire franchise, FNaFs 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2015 would also be the year where the Five Nights at Freddy's novels would start releasing, starting with the Silver Eyes, and also starting the Silver Eyes trilogy. For the anniversary, Scott decided to whip up this render right here. This is a very simplistic thank you poster with all of the characters that have been released thus far. It's kind of surreal looking at this image again, especially nowadays with all the new characters that have been added. Also, this teaser in particular is pretty synonymous because it would soon later transform into the Five Nights at Freddy's World teaser. That game would be released in 2016 was a pretty substantial year for Five Nights at Freddy's, because obviously we have the aforementioned Five Nights at Freddy's World, which would get review bombed so hard that it had to be removed from Steam and instead was made free on GameJolt. Then Scott Kaufman would then update the game's visuals to make it look better, and then he would also release Update 2 with a bunch of new characters that are completely broken and some parody games to go alongside it. And then of course we also have the official Five Nights at Freddy's release of Sister Location. At this point, most official mainline FNaF titles would now release yearly, which, to be fair, is a lot more sensible than releasing 4 in the span of a whole year. But anyway, we have the anniversary to look at, and the anniversary this time around is actually pretty interesting. Basically, it's just a bunch of behind-the-scenes screenshots. First, we have the Freddy one, which is just a simple wireframe and some models with Freddy's head on an endoskeleton. The second one we have is this Bonnie one, which is actually fully rendered as seen here, though I do vaguely remember there being a meme about it involving this image, but I couldn't find it, so you can have this one instead, I guess. And we also have this one of Foxy, where he's actually fixed and he actually does not have a hook. We also have this one of Springtrap, who just looks like he's about to get smited by the god of the sun himself. And then, of course, we have arguably the most interesting 2 images here, being official behind-the-scenes shots of 2 scenes from the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which, yes, in case you didn't know, a lot of FNaF, especially the earlier titles, are all pre-rendered. That's pretty much all 2016's anniversary had to offer, which means we get to transition into 2017 was a pretty oddball year for the franchise, simply by virtue of the fact that pretty much nothing happened. Okay, well, what I mean by that is that while we did get the release of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator in 2017, the thing is no one knew it was coming out. There was no teasers made for the project, so pretty much every time you go over to Scott's website, what you would find is nothing, pretty much. You just find a black, empty void, just with Scott Games logo on it. And then if you try to look at the website these these days, what you'll find is an empty black void with no logo on it. So obviously, Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator releases around roughly near the end of the year. For the anniversary though, weirdly enough, they just did the same thing as last time, just a bunch of behind the scenes shots and renders of certain characters. Now, what's rather interesting about this is there's actually something hidden in some of these images, namely these ones right here, because if you look close enough, you can actually end up finding models of the FNaF 6 characters, all except Lefty. For whatever reason, I don't know why Lefty was left out. We have two of which that reveal Molten Freddy, we have one that reveals Scrap Trap, and the other of course being Scrap Baby. This, in my opinion, is a really interesting way of going about teasing the game. Oh, and we also got that one shot of Bonnie, you know, the one that I really like talking about from FNaF 1. Yeah, let's just get on to... So for the next 3 years, these anniversaries, I don't have a whole lot to say about them, so I just decided it would be better for me to just cram them all into this little mini lightning round here. Starting with 2018, this would be the year that Ultimate Custom Night would come out. And of course, one of the most iconic things about Ultimate Custom Night in general was when Dorko actually managed to beat it. Dorko was then allowed to interview Scott Cawthon after he beat 50/20 mode. This would of course become the iconic video, an interview with Scott Cawthon, which, yes, this is in fact the 4th anniversary celebration content. 2019 would actually be a pretty big year for FNaF, because obviously this would introduce us to Steel Wall as the head honcho of the FNaF series at this point, as well as their debut game, Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, as well as the DLC that would release a couple months after, Curse of Dreadbear. This would also be the year that Freddy in Space 2 would release, as well as FNaF AR, nobody's favorite mobile game. And to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, Scott Cawthon uploaded the first ever teaser for Security Breach. And we would see the new series of Five Nights at Freddy's books with Fazbear Fright starting with Into the Pit. 2020, the year everybody was stuck indoors and the only things people cared about was either Doom Eternal or Animal Crossing. Remember everybody calling Zippity Bunny Glitch Trap for a while? I also remember visiting this girl's island I used to talk to. The first thing I saw when I flew in was her waving at me next to a paint canvas that called me a whore. Anyway, 2020 would be a bit of a slow burner for Five Nights at Freddy's, and of course Security Breach would end up getting delayed to 2021. Honestly, I feel like the only thing that happened with FNaF at this point was the announcement of the Fazbear Fanverse initiative. I mean, even the anniversary this year was a bit lackluster. I remember people being pretty upset about it for a bit, so... Yeah, the anniversary this time, by the way, was just a bunch of unreleased teasers of Glamrock Chica and Roxanne Wolf. So yeah, little bit of a bummer, to be honest, but luckily this would also be the year that Steel Wall would start celebrating. They would just upload a piece of artwork that was drawn by this individual right here, Twitter user Retro Haunts. 2021 sure was the year of all time for Five Nights at Freddy's. Security Breach would be delayed a second time, which would then give Scott the opportunity to release Fury's Rage, the apology game that was made to exist because Security Breach got delayed for a second time. And then when Security Breach actually released, it would be quite literally the worst Five Nights at Freddy's game to ever come out, and I don't think that title is going to be taken away from it anytime soon. But don't worry, because the Fanverse started releasing stuff, with One Night at Flumpty's releasing its 3rd entry in the same year. So at least it wasn't all bad. Now for the anniversary was actually pretty good. These last couple anniversaries have a lot of content to talk about, and is mainly due to the fact that most of it is just Fanverse stuff. There's 4 things that came out, 2 of which are the highlights and 2 of which are more smaller things, so we'll start with those 2. First, Click Team would start celebrating. Their first celebration for the FNaF anniversary would be a video they would upload called 7 Years of FNAF's Amazing Fanbase. It's a 10-minute video of just a bunch of fan art from various different people. Steel Wall would once again drop some more artwork on their Twitter page, this time being from Twitter user @Revis. So these next 2 things that happened for the 7th anniversary are, in my opinion, the main highlights. So let's start with talking about Hex. Now, for those of you who do not know what this is, Hex is a brand that is owned by Dorko, and Hex can sort of be split up into 2 subcategories, the first of which is going to be just Hex X FNaF, which is basically me just saying that Hex is basically a FNaF merch store. In case you didn't know, the 7th year anniversary revealed the Hex FNaF plushies. I'm pretty sure most of you have probably already known that by now, since the Hex X FNaF stuff has been going on since then. Actually, as of recording this, either it's already come out or it's going to come out, but there is sister location plushies that are about to release. So to kind of describe the plushies to you, basically the whole gimmick is that you can sort of pull them apart and put them back together, since all the major body parts have at least a magnet in them, so you can just kind of replace them with other parts from other characters, which does seem to explain why they are a bit pricey, usually being upwards of like $55, which obviously, as you could probably tell, I haven't actually bought a single one of these before, and to be honest, I don't really intend to, unless Dorko, for whatever reason, out of the kindness of his heart, decides to carpet bomb my house with nothing but Hex plushies. Yeah, I'm probably never gonna get one of these. Bit of a shame too, because I really like the aesthetic. It goes for a bit more of a gothic feel, with all the button eyes and the stitches, and some like sharp teeth smiles. It's all really cool looking. I love the art that's drawn for some of the characters as well. Like, it's all really cool stuff. It's also a bit of a shame that the actual Hex itself just kind of gets buried under all this FNaF stuff. I mean, if you look at the actual tab for the Hex merch, it's just two things, like a Kai hoodie and a Kai shirt, and then the rest of it is just Dorko merch. And there's also a comic about it as well, which you can read for free, by the way. Currently there are only 2 chapters, with a third one supposedly being on the way, but I don't really know when that's going to come out. I read through the 2 chapters available on the website myself. I quite like the look of the comic. All of the art for the comic series so far has been drawn by artist Hero Shark, who also works for Hex in general. Honestly, I think I quite enjoyed my time with Hex, for as short as it was. I definitely think it's worth checking out if you're interested, and honestly, I really do hope that we see more of Hex in the future. However, for whatever reason, if I have not sold you on Hex just yet, do not fret, because I have found that in Hex Chapter 2, there is a hot spider MILF in it. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is something to do with Five Nights at Freddy's Plus. I'm sure you know about this already, but just on the off chance, Five Nights at Freddy's Plus was supposed to be a remake of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, but unfortunately it was cancelled. But we're not going to go into that because I want to talk about the thing it made for the 7-year anniversary, being this video right here. This video is called Breaking and Entering. It is the 6th episode of a mini-series that most people like to call FNaF Plus VHS, which yes, this is a Five Nights at Freddy's VHS video. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these videos pop up over the past couple of years, whether it be the actual videos themselves or reaction content, and then of course you have like the analysis content so that the goth girls have something to watch instead of working at a McDonald's for the rest of their life. Now obviously Five Nights at Freddy's Plus itself, and specifically Breaking and Entering, and in my opinion do something completely different, at least compared to most of these FNaF VHS videos, and that's just completely rely on the creepy atmosphere of FNaF 1. I mean, you can kind of see this in some of the earlier episodes, but in particular this one feels the most thought out. Throughout most of this video you can just see Foxy just lurking in the darkness. You can't really see him all that well, so here's a screenshot of the Pirates Cove scene, and you can see Foxy pretty easily on the right hand side here. That is until he gets to the office and then he gets, he shows up and then he ends up hiding in the backstage. It'll always be a shame that we'll never be able to find out what this game would have been on release, but you know what they say, it is what it is. 2022 could probably just be considered the security breach recovery year because we didn't get a whole lot. As a matter of fact, we got no major game releases at all. Instead, we got the release of the new book series, Tales from the Pizzaplex. I haven't read any single one of these. I know one of these books in particular is incredibly important for something I'll talk about later. The only game release we had wasn't even really a new thing. It was just an old game from 2020 just getting re-released for Steam, and that was Pop Goes Arcade. I already made a video about it, so I don't need to go into detail about that. So, anniversary content. Once again, Steelwall would upload some artwork, this time 2 pieces of artwork. The first one being drawn by Twitter user Reslin, and the second one being drawn by Ren from Ren and Stimpy. This time around, Click Team would also release some artwork being drawn by artist Yinky Beginky, who actually, believe it or not, has drawn a lot of artwork for Click Team, and it's all really good stuff. Also, Game Jolt would join in on the fun with a anniversary event called FNaF Turns 8. This was basically a little thing that Game Jolt was doing. There was 3 live streams, there was a FNaF themed birthday cake, some fan game show-offs, as well as a FNaF stream where they would play the original Five Nights at Freddy's, as well as a fan art contest. And the winner would win a Fredbear's Family Diner poster that was signed by the artist, I think from Steel Wall. We would also receive some pretty big news regarding the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, as that release date was approaching pretty quickly here, being Jim Henson's Creature Shop would be behind the animatronic designs, which was actually pretty cool. I'll talk more about that when we get to the actual movie, but we'll kind of leave it there. So for the main highlight of the anniversary, we actually got some Fanverse merch. Yeah, believe it or not, one of the major things about the Fanverse was the fact that we would be getting merch for it. And what we ended up getting was 3 plushies. Pop Goes, Candy, and Classic Blake from Funko. Yay. I'll be honest, I am not a big fan of Funko. I only own the Springtrap plushie from Funko, and honestly, just looking at that should probably explain everything on why I don't like them, and don't even get me started on Funko Pops. But yeah, honestly, they're fine. Like, you know, Funko, specifically with their FNaF plushies, it's very hit or miss, so these look nice. We also get some Hex plushies as well, which is, well, they're definitely better than the GameStop exclusive ones, that's for sure. I found this one on Amazon, don't tell. 2023 would probably go down as one of the biggest years for Five Nights at Freddy's, and that is solely due to the fact of a certain something releasing this year that was stuck in development hell for a very long time. But before we get into that, let's talk about the 2 other things that were released for this year, being from Steel Wall. First and foremost was FNaF Ruin, the DLC expansion for Security Breach. Honestly, after playing through this, I now have the utmost sudden urge to go on twitter.com and type out the phrase, well, that was boring, and the entire Five Nights at Freddy's fandom would completely agree with me on that. Yeah, sorry to like the 3 FNaF Ruin fans out there that this is how you ended up finding out that I did not care about FNaF Ruin. I will say it is better than Security Breach, but honestly, it still isn't really anything to write home about, but I guess it's not all that bad because Monty in this game acts like a little goober, so that must amount to something. The second thing that happened was actually a sequel to Help Wanted. I remember this one just kind of coming out of nowhere at a random state of play, but hey look, a sequel to Help Wanted, that seems pretty cool, isn't it? Honestly, after playing this one, I think I like the first one more, because I feel like this one just has a lot less FNaF content in it. All you get is some of Sister Location, and just FNaF 6 was just sorta Meet the Medic, but replace the Heavy with Helpy or something. And then of course the thing I was alluding to earlier was actually the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Yep, after 8 long years, this movie has finally released to the general public, and honestly, it still feels surreal, like a year later. Just seeing this movie finally come out after so long just feels so rewarding, at least to me in my opinion. But to be honest, I feel like most people were more interested in stealing the cutouts from their local mall theater instead of actually watching the damn film, but honestly, I thought the film was pretty fun. I enjoyed my time with it. I'd say probably the best part is arguably good old Bill Afton. I think casting Matthew Lillard was a pretty good choice considering he was Ghostface, I think in Scream 2. Although I think more people were just sort of clinging onto the fact that Matthew Lillard is actually also Shaggy, so I guess that technically means that Springtrap can go Ultra Instinct. But onto the anniversary stuff now. I'll be honest, I think the anniversary this year was a little bit lackluster. Not bad or anything, but it's pretty obvious that it's definitely a step down compared to the previous 2. We had some stuff for Pop Goes Evergreen, 2 placeholder images that were released for the anniversary. That's all I really have to say about it though. Speaking of Fanverse stuff, we would get more plushies, this time being the Long Candy and Pop Goes plushies from U2's. I'll be honest, not too big a fan of U2's either. I do think they are better compared to Funko, but like, I think what really just makes me not like it as much is just the stupid eye thing. Like, I actually own one of the plushies, and it's the Vanny one by the way. I think it's a pretty decent plush, but my only thing is just the eye. eyes. Like, I just don't like the whole brand recognition that they do, especially because it's actually pretty inconsistent, because sometimes you'll just get stuff like the Vanny plushie where it's like, they just do the same dumb eye thing and it just doesn't really work for me. But then sometimes they'll actually use it in more creative ways. Like, for instance, the Candy plushie that I just showed you. They actually use the brand recognition as the highlights for the eyes, and it actually kind of blends in pretty well. But then, like, the Pop Goes one, they just do the same thing they've done for all the other plushies. U2s would also have these flocked figures as well, which is basically the same ones as the original FNaF ones, just they have fur on them now, pretty much. Steel Wool would announce that they were going to go to PAX for the anniversary. Interestingly enough, there's no artwork from them this time. Same thing for Click Team as well. Like, Click Team were not here for the anniversary, unfortunately. Hex would actually not release any plushies, instead just release some artwork from the artist that I mentioned earlier. Game Jolt would show up for a second time, sort of doing the same thing they did last year, just minus the live streams, where basically they would do a bunch of quests, and said quests would allow you to earn certain rewards, like some avatar frames. Apparently there was a sticker pack, and, well, the big thing was that you could enter a raffle to either win some FNaF U2s or a copy of Security Breach. I pray to whoever got a copy of Security Breach for the PS4, because honestly, putting that game in a PS4 just makes that damn thing a ticking time bomb. So here it is, the big 10-year anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, before we get into unpacking what there is to offer for this anniversary, let's just get the smaller stuff out the way first. Firstly, we have some artwork that was uploaded by both the Scott Games Twitter account as well as Steel Wool for the 10th anniversary, and Steel Wool would upload a short little animation for the anniversary. It was basically just an announcement trailer that Steel Wool was going out to PAX West once again for 2024. Funko would release some gambling addiction merchandise as well as a statue of Golden Freddy. Speaking of statue, U2s would actually drop some Chipper and Sons merch for the 10th anniversary, and just, you know how nice it is when they don't do the stupid eye thing? Like, why can't they do this all the time? And then of course we have the big celebration, being this. This was uploaded on the official Scott Games Twitter account around mid-June. This was basically a list of various different things that would happen in about the first week of August. The way it was going to work was simple. Every single day, starting from August 1st up until August 8th, you would get one piece of new FNaF content every single day. That was the plan. They had a list available way ahead of time so that we already knew what was going to happen and when it was going to happen, and then they ended up changing it just right before August came around. Without further ado, let's finally talk about the 10-year anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's. So the first game that released for the FNaF 10th anniversary was My Pop Goes. Now My Pop Goes is pretty interesting, mainly more so for the inspiration rather than the actual game. That said, inspiration of course being Pixel Chicks. Now Pixel Chicks was a toy brand that ran from 2005 up until 2009, and basically it was supposed to be some kind of competitor to Tamagotchi, with the tagline of a 2D girl in a 3D world. So basically you would have a Pixel Chick that would sort of be on an LCD screen, and then you have like the setting, which is like a house or a cabin or something, and it would have like a, well, essentially a 3D background, and it would actually look like she was like, you know, for instance, sitting on the couch. You could do various activities with her, and also one of the most unique things about this toy was if anyone else had a Pixel Chick, you could actually hook them up with each other, and you could have the Pixel Chicks hang out, you know, in a typical 2005 teenage girl fashion, you know, liking clothes, hanging out with your friends at the mall, and having a pretty bad attitude. She just like me for real. Now, the actual game itself is, well, your typical Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay fare. You have 5 levels of increasing difficulty, as well as a bunch of resources to manage. You have a hunger meter, a thirst meter, and a boredom meter. Basically, these will constantly decrease as time progresses, and what you need to do is just manage those resources pretty wisely. Hold right to cook your pizza, and when it's done, it'll go to the table, table, hold left to take a drink of some soda, and if you just don't hold anything, Pop Goes will head to the table and listen to some music. You can also hold the down key to actually eat your slices of pizza. And that's kind of it, to be fair. It just gets more difficult as you progress through the game, with the meters decreasing faster the further you progress in the game. Every time you beat a level, you can unlock some stickers to put on your little Freddy Fazbear's Pizza here, and that's kind of it. I didn't really get that far. I think I got as far as day 4 before just deciding to kind of call it quits, really. However, I am fully aware that once you beat the main story, there is a endless mode that you can unlock with a new variation of the pizzeria being based on the office from Joy of Creation. It's the same thing, just replace the pizzas with cupcakes and the drinks of soda for like coffee or something. And you can also get a Pop Goes variant and a Candies variant as well. There's also some mini games that you can play as well. These mini games are pretty basic, like, you know, a fishing mini game, snake, and whack-a-mole or something. And beating this will unlock a playable character for you. That, of course, just being the Pop Goes characters and no one else. And once you unlock a character, you get a diary entry for them. And it was at this point that I made the unfortunate discovery that Pop Goes' actual name is Oliver, and now I don't want to play this game anymore. So for day 2 of the anniversary, we were gifted with the Joy of Creation, specifically a demo for the eventual release for the full game that's supposed to be coming out this year. And wow, it has been seriously that long since the original story mode came out. Christ. So basically, this is a demo of the office section from story mode. But before we even get into it, we have to contemplate first. What are we contemplating about? No idea. So basically, it is just the office section from Joy of Creation. And that's kind of it, to be fair. There was just some minor changes here and there that make the experience a little bit more interesting, like how you need to properly aim your flashlight at Freddy now, or how you need to look at Foxy multiple times, and it actually increases as you progress. You still need to find the cupcakes for Chica, and of course we have to avoid everybody's favourite Captain Falcon main, Bonnie. However, there was a pretty big change to how the gameplay works, and that is a power management system. Basically, the way it works is there is a fuse box in this little room here. This will allow you to monitor your various different things that use up power. There's 5 of them: the main power, your own flashlight, and the 3 cameras in the office area, which, let's be honest, you do not need that many monitors for 3 cameras. If you need that many monitors, I am convinced you're a Twitch streamer. So yeah, you need to manage the power by replacing the fuses whenever they get low or go out. So how do you get the fuses? Well, by exploring the room. There's various cabinets and drawers that you can open up, and usually you would need these to find Chica's cupcakes. Not only do you need them for the cupcakes, but you can find some fuses in here. You can carry at least 1 fuse at a time, and you need to sort of pick and choose what you want to replace. If you want a little bit of help, you probably want to mainly focus on replacing the main power and your flashlight, since those are the 2 things that are going to go out the most. Your flashlight goes out after 6 flashes, and the main power will just constantly drain no matter if you're using the cameras or not, so you just want to keep an eye on that. And well, once you flash Freddy about 12 times, that's it, game over. However, I will just quickly mention that there is actually some stuff that Nixon has shown off on his Twitter that I think is really incredible. Not gonna go too much into it, but I mean, honestly, just based on that demo alone, yeah, this is gonna be the best FNaF game ever. So for day 3 of the FNaF anniversary, we were gifted with a book. Yeah, this is VIP, a brand new book, a part of a brand new series of books for this franchise being dubbed the Interactive Novel Series. There's been 4 of these books that have released so far, and honestly, most people don't really like them all that much. The only one people like is The Week Before, which is just straight up about the week that Phone Guy was actually in the office at the time before he died. But honestly, the main takeaway of that whole book is that his official name is Ralph.
I'm in danger!
Basically, the whole synopsis is that you're Devon taking care of your little brother Ike, and you meet this character called VIP, which is an abbreviation of Very Informative Pig, which is really funny, by the way. And basically, he kidnaps your little brother and puts him in a soul trap. Now you need to play his game and get as many tokens as you can. And also, this dude is a straight up capitalist. I also quite like this one illustration of him as well, because it looks like he's about to be shot in the head by Mr. Boss. Day 4 was the second interview with Scott Cawthon, and I have nothing to say about it, so... And this is by far and none the thing that everybody was looking forward to when it came to this 10-year anniversary. Honestly, you could just get rid of everything on this list right here and just keep the collaboration announcement, and I still think people would have been more than satisfied. Five Nights at Freddy's isn't really one to do collabs, so getting the announcement that there will be a collab regarding Five Nights at Freddy's was really exciting. I mean, hell, even I jumped in on the whole thing, making one of those, like, artist engagement bait posts saying that, oh, if this happens, then I'll draw this. Obviously, it didn't happen, so I don't get to draw it, but what ended up happening was even better anyway. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of what the collab ended up being, which, I'll be honest, I feel like everybody knows what it is at this point, I just wanted to talk about the whole cycle of events that led up to the announcement, because I must admit, it was honestly pretty funny. So back when the list was initially revealed, everybody kind of jumped onto the hype train of the announcement potentially being Fortnite, which, to be honest, makes a lot of sense considering Fortnite is kind of a game that collabs with basically everything now. So everybody was anticipating it, as well as a lot of Fortnite accounts, so they ended up leaking the announcement of an update that would happen the same day as the FNaF one. So everybody was gearing up for it to be the FNaF collab, until it wasn't, and instead they ended up collabing with Fall Guys instead. So now everybody assumed that the collab would now be with Stumble Guys, which for those who do not know what that game is, it's basically just a Fall Guys knockoff that gets collabs for some reason. So it basically made everybody's heart sink to the bottom of the Mariana Trench to find out that they also had an update scheduled for that day, and it was just some regular update, but honestly, like, everybody in the replies to that tweet were acting like their fucking grandma died or something. And then Markiplier's clothing company Cloak would release some teasers to promote the merch drop for the 10th anniversary. Everybody thought that it was supposed to be the collab. It wasn't, so they ended up deleting that first initial teaser and just posted this instead. So about an hour or two later, after all the dust was settled, the collab would be announced to be Dead by Daylight. So here he is in his full guts and glory. Springtrap has finally made his way into Dead by Daylight, and it feels so surreal that he's even here to begin with. Now, before we get into the gameplay, I just want to talk about the other stuff regarding the character, starting with obviously his characterization. I think, honestly, he seems pretty fine. I think they nailed it with his characterization. Springtrap has been a character more about the theatrics, especially in later entries. I know in FNaF 3 he's not like that at all, but because obviously at the time, Scott didn't know what he wanted to do with him, and it's pretty obvious that this is what he is now, and that's fine. I think they did a really good job with his current iteration of his character, so it's all good. The second thing is, well, PJ Haywood returns to voice him. It has been a while since we've heard PJ Haywood voice Springtrap, so it's kind of nice to see him reprise his role for this game. I mean, he quite literally calls himself the fun one. Also, shout out to the one voice line where he literally makes fun of Henry's line from FNaF 6, despite the fact that this takes place, like, right at the events of FNaF 3, so that technically has not happened yet, which I guess now technically implies that Henry said it to him before, and I guess in FNaF 6 he just wanted to use it again because why not? I just think that's kind of funny. Springtrap has a few cosmetics. He has two from FNaF AR, being Clown Springtrap and Toxic Springtrap. I think these skins look really, really good. And then we have his two legendary skins, being my personal favorite skin of his, being Glitchtrap from Help Wanted, and the one that everybody knew was coming, the Yellow Rabbit from the Five Nights at Freddy's film. I also absolutely adore the fact that they actually got Matthew Lillard to voice the Yellow Rabbit in this film, or William Afton from the movie, whatever you want to call him. I honestly think that's kind of cute. Now, moving on to the map now, this is kind of at least in my opinion. The map itself is a little bit boring. Like, I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit bigger, but I don't know, the pizzeria seems really small, and I guess that's mainly because they don't really want to make an indoor map because people absolutely despise indoor maps, like RPD for instance. It's not necessarily a bad map because it does have some pretty fun Easter eggs and whatnot, like if you fix this generator here, the animatronics start performing. I've also heard that Chica's Cupcake can have a small chance of showing up whenever you you enter a locker. It's little stuff like that that's honestly pretty adorable. I quite like it. But obviously the problem is I just kind of find the pizzeria to be a little too small for my taste, and I kind of wish it was a little bit bigger, because basically the rest of the map is just random tiles with loops and stuff, so yeah, it's just a mid-map in my opinion. Now, Springtrap's main kit in this game is pretty deviously simple, at least on paper anyway, but the more you end up playing this guy, the more I think you'll come to figure out that this character actually has a pretty decently high skill ceiling. And I do just want to get this out of the way, I do still feel like his actual power that he got in the game does feel like they are playing it relatively safe, all things considered, and I would have really much more appreciated a more original kit for this character. I don't really have any ideas for it, but I feel like the Phantom should have been involved to some capacity anyway. But despite that, I do actually think that Springtrap's kit that he has in game is actually pretty good, and I do still quite like it, despite the fact I would have preferred something much better. Now, Springtrap in this game has a ranged attack, that of course being his fire axe, which ironically enough just has to be named after the exact same establishment that burns at the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, most people when he first came out immediately jumped on the he's just Huntress bandwagon, and while that is technically true, it was pretty obvious they did that because of the fact that they both wear bunny masks. Now, Springtrap's axe in particular is pretty heavy, so it's gonna travel in a very heavy arc. However, while that may seem like a pretty substantial downside, it honestly ends up turning out to be an incredible upside, because now Springtrap can throw the axe over obstacles, effectively making his axe pretty good for anti-looping, which looping in this game is pretty strong, so giving him that ability definitely is incredibly useful for him. This has given players the opportunity to hit orbitals, which is essentially just clip farming and throwing the axe into the air and hoping to God it ends up hitting someone. Is it actually viable? Not really, but is it fun to hit people with it? Yup, but it doesn't end there, because it turns out that the axe has two different special utilities. The first one is more for information, whereas the other one is just more for offense. Let's start with the easiest one first, and that's just missing the axe throw. If the axe ends up hitting anything that isn't a survivor, a small little radius will form around it. Any survivor that walks into it is given Killer Instinct, which in this game is like a status effect. You just see the location of the survivor that you're chasing. And then you have the other one where you end up hitting a survivor with the axe itself. And instead of causing a little radius, the axe will become wedged within the survivor. They'll be given the broken debuff, which means they cannot heal, and Springtrap loses the axe until he either reclaims it or the survivor removes it as well. Oh, and also, whenever Springtrap throws the axe away, he gets a 5% speed buff, putting him at basically the default speed for most other M1 killers in this game, like Trapper for instance, at least compared to the Huntress, who is forced to be at 110. So Springtrap is now in chase because he's basically an M1 killer at this point. So if Springtrap can get up close enough to the survivor, he has two options. He can either just M1 the survivor and get them instantly down, or alternatively, you could go for the aura farming strategy and just rip the axe out of their back and jump scare them. And I put jump scare in quotation marks because it, to be honest, doesn't really feel like a jump scare. Also, fun fact by the way, if you end up using the two legendary skins that you can get in this game, Glitch Trap and the Yellow Rabbit, you can actually get different sounds and animations with them. With Glitch Trap, you just basically get the shush from Help Wanted, and then specifically for the Yellow Rabbit, my personal favorite, you just get White Man Jump Scare, which is like the funniest thing you can do in the game. And then Springtrap also has access to his security doors. There are 7 of these doors and they spawn on the map. They typically like to spawn nearby generators, but it is a little randomized. Like sometimes you'll get doors that are super close to them, or sometimes you'll get ones that are further away, sometimes they face the generators, or they look away from them. But basically, they will always spawn nearby generators. Springtrap can use these for some pretty good map mobility, and every time he exits one of these doors, he is given undetectable. This is probably just a reference to the fact that Springtrap likes to hide a lot in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and some of these cameras, well, most of the time. Survivors can also use the doors for a couple of things. First and foremost is the map traversal I mentioned earlier, because unlike a lot of other killers who have map traversal, they can use Springtrap's map traversal, and the issue is that, well, it's a little bit more of a risk-reward system, where basically survivors can use them, sure, but Springtrap can at any point go into one of the security doors, choose the one that is highlighted in yellow, and he will instantaneously grab you from the office. This is effectively an insta-down, unless you have some kind of like anti-tunneling perk or something. And then you also have the cameras, as the survivors can use the cameras to locate Springtrap, and it reveals his location via a static aura. This is basically to counteract his undetectable buff that he gets whenever he uses the doors, or well, I mean, if he's running something like Bonnie's guitar string, he's not gonna have undetectable anyway, so... Moving on to Springtrap's perks, like every other killer in the game, they get 3 perks to their name, and Springtrap, his selection's a little okay, I think. Phantom Fear is probably the best perk he has in slot. It's a pretty solid aura reading perk where survivors reveal their aura for 2 seconds if they look at you while in your terror radius, so it's a pretty solid perk to run on him for the most part. Haywire, honestly, is not a perk I think is bad per se, but for me, it's a lot more niche, since it fills a very specific role in endgame builds, which, in my personal opinion, I'm not really too big on endgame builds in this game, so it's a perk that I'm probably not gonna use that often. And then, Help Wanted. It's shit, don't use it. Springtrap also has a handful of add-ons like every other killer in this game. However, what makes Springtrap a lot more interesting is the fact that, honestly, his add-ons in this game, they're honestly all really good. Or at least, you know, like, most of them are really good. Obviously, I don't see anybody preaching for shit like Chica's bib. But honestly, I think there's a lot of mileage and utility you can get out of most add-ons here. He has a lot of speed add-ons, he has stealth add-ons, he has debuff add-ons, he has a lot of stuff he can mess around with. Most people will probably typically tell you add-ons like Bonnie's guitar string or Foxy's hook are some of his best add-ons, and yeah, I would honestly agree, but honestly, you should give some of the lesser known add-ons a try, like Celebrate Poster and Access Panel. I think are actually pretty solid add-ons, especially Access Panel. Like, if you know how to use that add-on, you can get some pretty good mileage out of it. And then obviously the whole skill ceiling aspect typically just comes from how you properly utilize his kit. It's obviously based on the add-ons and perks that you decide to run with the character influence how you want to utilize the axe and the doors to maximize his potential. And that's pretty much it for Springtrap. I honestly think Springtrap's a pretty good killer. He's not perfect or anything. I still would have preferred it if he had a more original ability, but as it stands, I think his current power is pretty good, and that's pretty much it. Only thing I will say though is that they should totally add him in the dating sim, and I would totally swoon Springtrap, by the way, as the legend himself, Dr. Sex. So for day 6, we would get yet another announcement, this time being from Steel Wall, and the next major entry within the Five Nights at Freddy's series, Secret of the Mimic. To be honest, I'm a little cautiously optimistic for this game. Cautious because, you know, Security Breach and Ruin weren't really all that good, but I'm optimistic because, honestly, I think this game looks actually kinda fun. Can't say for certain because, you know, I haven't played it. We'll have to wait and see, but honestly, from the footage they showed off in that State of Play trailer a while ago, I don't know, it looks kind of cool. I mean, we seem to have some gameplay gimmicks, the puzzles look kind of interesting, and they also have the Fallout terminals, just replace Vault Boy with Helpy, and there you go. I love the art style they got going for this game, I absolutely adore it. Secret of the Mimic has a lot to do regarding the Mimic. Now, like I said earlier, I didn't really bother reading any of the Tales from the Petaplex books, so instead, I'm just gonna kind of give you a brief summary of the Mimic, at least in general. Now, the Mimic was introduced in FNaF Ruin, and this was my first introduction to the character, and to be honest, didn't really like him, considering this whole game was essentially just an elongated version of Night 5 from Sister Location. Didn't like him very much. That wasn't until I decided to research this character to get a better understanding, and turns out, yeah, most of the stuff is mainly in the books. So basically, the extent of the Mimic's backstory is as thus. This is Edwin. He made the Mimic. His son David got ran over by a car, so Edwin beat the Mimic to death with a metal pipe, and then, the Mimic is now evil, so he ends up going on a mass killing spree. That's basically the extent of the Mimic's entire backstory, pretty much. The only thing that kind of caught me off guard a little bit was the actual murdering part, because I'm not kidding, apparently, the Mimic ends up literally just doom glory killing a bunch of technicians, like ripping their arms and their heads off, which just made me look at my screen like this. I often seem to forget how ballistic these books can go sometimes. Honestly, I kind of want Mimic to do the same move that Jason Voorhees does in Freddy vs. Jason, where he snaps a guy's neck by turning his head about 180 degrees. So for day 7, we were given 5 laps at Freddy's, or at least a demo for the game anyway, and honestly, I'm just gonna rip the band-aid straight off. I don't care about it. I was originally planning to go a little bit more in depth with this game, and just what I don't like about it in general. So instead, I'll just give you the short story real quick, and that's that Garfield Kart and Race with Ryan finally have some competition to see who is the worst kart racer of all time. But honestly, the funniest thing about this game is probably Springtrap's character icon, because he just looks like he doesn't even want to be here. He just wants to be in Dead by Daylight instead. Oh, and by the way, the game ended up getting delayed to 2026, so yeah, definitely for the best. So for the 10-year anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, we would be getting Into the Pit, which was intended to be the 10-year anniversary game, but because of an oopsie on the developers of the game, Megacat Studios, they ended up just deciding to release the game a few hours early, just because why not, I guess. You've probably guessed because of the name I've been saying a billion times, but yes, this is in fact based off of one of the original books from the Fazbear Frights collection of the same name. It's basically the same story and everything. So if you haven't read the book before, then, well, lucky you, because you can just play the game and have the exact same story told to you there, but now you get to play it. Hooray! The game follows a kid named Oswald and his parents who are stuck in a bit of a financial struggle at this point. Money's tight and unfortunately they can't really afford to do a lot of cool things that Oswald wants to do, so the best place he can eat out at is Jeff's Pizza, but he's all on his lonesome. Jeff's Pizza is a pretty rundown pizza joint owned by Jeff, the land shark, everybody's favorite bottom tier in Marvel Rivals. His dad seems to be incredibly late from work, so he decides to prank him by jumping in a musty, crusty old ball pit that will surely give this kid pink eye, but lo and behold, it doesn't, and instead, the ball pit turns out to be the damn TARDIS from Doctor Who, and we end up somehow traveling all the way back to 1985. Okay, where it turns out that Jeff's Pizza is actually a painted over Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Whoa, who would have guessed we go to a Freddy Fazbear's joint in a Five Nights at Freddy's game? No way. What's next? You're gonna tell me that I have to slay the princess in Slay the Princess? You end up meeting these two kids, Chip and Mike. I don't know why, but for some reason Chip in this game looks exactly like Ellis from Left 4 Dead 2, like he quite literally has his fit and everything. Can't tell you why though. Do some other tutorial island shit, and then we finally meet up with the Yellow Rabbit in this really cool animated cutscene that's just disguised as a, you know, QTE tutorial, but whatever. We then end up following him a little bit with some really more incredibly well animated stuff here. Honestly, I'm just gonna go out the gate and say it, this is easily the best looking Five Nights at Freddy's game I think we've ever had, which to be fair isn't really saying a whole lot because I don't think this franchise is really known a lot for its art direction. That goes to Desolate Hope, which isn't even a FNaF game. So yep, turns out he murdered the 5 children. Yep, what a surprise, who would have seen that one coming? And then we have to book it out of there, jump back into the ball pit, where our dad scolds us for like a couple seconds, only for Spring Bonnie jumps through the ball pit, kidnaps our dad, and replaces our dad with himself, and turns out that Spring Bonnie has Megamind's watch. Never knew he had that. So then he ends up driving us home, and then just fucking goes to sleep. Dude, that'd be like if I moved to Haddonfield, New Jersey, and then Michael Myers started to stalk me, but instead of actually killing me, he comes over to my house just to fall asleep on my couch or something. Whatever, man. So then we end up calling our mom, she doesn't believe us, and then we can actually play the video game I paid money for. And I'm only really going to be talking about one of these nights because, well, the game itself is pretty repetitive, so I only feel like I need to explain one thing in order for you to understand the rest of the thing. Now, each night starts off with you stuck in the house, and obviously you kind of have to find your way out while avoiding Spring Bonnie all at the same time. There are 4 methods of escaping, and after you use one of these methods, it becomes locked off for the rest of the game. So you would probably think that you kind of have to save the easy ones until dead last. Well, not really, because actually all of them are pretty easy. Well, maybe except for the basement window, because in order to get that, you need to get this ladder from the attic and escort it all the way down to the basement, which I ended up doing on my first try, so yeah, pretty easy. easy. Then you make your way over to Jeff's and of course Freddy's, where we have to try and look for Dad. But you don't actually look for your dad, and instead you have to save a bunch of children. Every single night will have a child that is hidden away somewhere, and basically you need to do a series of little quests in order to save them. For night 1 specifically, you find a child in the hallway who is trapped inside of a springlock endoskeleton, and it is about to... So basically, he's been put into a saw trap. You need to get the screwdriver from the backstage in order to save him. But obviously the door is locked, so you need to get a key first. Jeff has a key, but in order to get the key from Jeff, you need to do a task for him, which is just simply taking out the trash. So once you get the keys, you can go to the backstage, get the screwdriver, and open up the suit to save the kid. Then Spring Bonnie will show up, and then he'll chase you down in a mandatory chase sequence, and then you leave, you jump through the ball pit, leave the pizzeria, that ends the night. And that's pretty much how it goes for every other night in this game. Now obviously there is a bit of a transition period because unfortunately Oswald is a child and he has to go to school. So usually you have like these pretty boring segments where you just go to school. Honestly, not a whole lot happens here. The only noteworthy thing about school in general is the fact that Oswald goes through these like Silent Hill nightmare sequences, I guess. And then obviously once you get back home, it's time to start the sequence all over again, escape the house and save the child. Obviously, as the nights progress, you get more access to the pizzeria. Spring Bonnie becomes a bit more aggressive. Obviously, you have the other animatronics that kind of act more or so as support for Spring Bonnie. By support, I mean basically they just act as noisemakers, like every other interactable in this game. Chica's probably the one I find the most annoying because she can just move around. She's a lot slower though, so honestly, just as long as you're going fast in this game, she's really not a problem. Bonnie is just absolutely pathetic in this game. All he does is he just camps somewhere, and usually that said place where he camps is a hiding spot that isn't even that good. Freddy is just the same as Bonnie, but instead he uses the doors instead of just random hiding spots, and that's pretty much it. Now speaking of those hiding spots, you have to quickly hide somewhere, which puts you into a hiding minigame, but it's literally just a QTE. Basically, just press the button when the game tells you to. Hiding under tables isn't actually very useful because they're not permanent for some reason. Instead, they kind of act more as like a parry system in this game, which I must admit, I think that's kind of cool. Your best hiding spots are like cupboards or like the Freddy suit, or in my personal opinion, the best hiding spot, the vents. The vents are literally the best hiding spot in the entire game. You can open these as early as night 1 once you get the screwdriver. Yeah, these things are kind of insane because yeah, sure, once you've hidden away from Spring Bonnie, you'll wander off, but instead of exiting and then going a different direction, well, you can actually use them as fast travel points, giving yourself actually pretty damn decent map mobility. There's only 2 vents in the entire establishment, but you can cover just a whole lot of ground with just these 2 vents in general. Not to mention that if you actually pair this up with the cell phone that you get on night 1, you can kind of break the entire game. You can basically just go to a specific room, sit in the vent, use the phone, make a lot of noise with the phone just by simply attempting to dial someone, but instead you just press enter twice, and then you can just kind of bait him into the room, and then you can just kind of fast travel to the other side of the vent, and then just kind of do whatever you need to do, and yeah, like it's just that easy to bait him over there. Now, I do want to just quickly shout out Night 4 real quick, because Night 4 in particular is probably the most unique night in this game. Not because of its gameplay or anything, that just stays the same. What I specifically mean is, well, this night in particular is the only night in the game to actually have a sequence break. If you don't know what a sequence break is, for whatever reason, apparently according to Google, the definition of what it is apparently just Super Metroid. Basically, a sequence break is, you're basically breaking the linear sequence that you're supposed to go in, and now if you play the game normally without really doing the sequence break, basically it's typical, you go to Freddy's blocking the door, you get taken back to the house, and then you have to do the escape sequence. This sequence break completely skips that entire section, so you can just get the firecrackers, go straight to Freddy, and then just beat the night normally. And you're probably wondering, well, how do you do it? Well, it's actually pretty simple. All you have to do is have one of the 3 following items: the Freddy mask, the toy Freddy, or you can get a PS Vita. However, the problem with this is that 2 of them are heavily reliant on RNG, and the other one is kind of grindy to get. You can get the mask, it has a very small chance of falling from the attic, and the toy Freddy that you can find can be found found in the storage room next to Golden Freddy. This is once again another random chance kind of thing. The PS Vita, on the other hand, is the one that you can always get no matter what, but requires the most amount of grinding for, because you need to play a lot of the arcade minigames. I'm sure you probably noticed this already, but as you play through the game, you've probably noticed a couple items that just kind of lay on the floor. These can be used in Jeff's Pizza to fix the arcade machines. How Oswald fixes the items, honestly, I have no idea. I don't know, maybe he's like the engineer from Team Fortress 2 and just whacks it with his wrench, and then all of a sudden it just gets upgraded for some reason. But yeah, if you fix all these arcade machines, you can play them for free. You can do it in Freddy's, but you do need tokens for it, so I would just probably wait until you get access to the items needed and then just play them. Then you just simply need to grind out at least 20 tickets from these minigames, and honestly, I'm not really going to bother going over most of these. Most of them are just pretty basic clones of already existing arcade titles or just dead memes. The only one worth mentioning is this Balloon Boy platformer one, which is just a reference to BB's Air Adventure from FNaF 3. There's a secret party hat in this level that you can get where Purple Guy's involved. So then, once you get the tickets, you have to exchange those tickets to make them vouchers, so then you can give them to the prize dispenser, and you have actually 5 different things you can receive from it. The first thing is obviously the PS Vita, as I mentioned earlier. The next 3 items are just stickers for your scrapbook, or just the main menu, basically. And there is a secret 5th one that I'm going to deliberately leave until just a little bit later when we get to the secrets of this video. And then of course we have Night 5, which of course is the ending, so there's not really much to say about the night itself. But yeah, you eventually find your dad, and then you go to the ball pit, you take him back through, and this is where you can receive one of the very few endings of this game. The 1, 2, or 3-star ending will be given to you depending on the criteria that you've met throughout the game. Kinda treat it as like a little checklist of sorts. Now, the 1-star ending is considered to be the bad ending of this game, and basically Oswald just gets kidnapped and presumably dies. Actually, not presumably, he dies. The 2-star ending just requires a little bit more effort, but basically in this one, Oswald does manage to escape. He doesn't get unscathed, however, because he does take a massive bite from Spring Bonnie, which literally causes him to drip blood through his bloody jacket, which I must say, that's an impressive bite there. Only for then Jeff to go investigate, where Jeff instead gets killed. And then you have the 3-star ending where, you know, the same thing kinda happens in the 2-star ending, but instead of getting bitten, Spring Bonnie just gets caught in the safety net for the ball pit, which, how did he even get in there to begin with, actually? So, you save your dad, everybody's happy, Jeff's Pizza ends up becoming a smash hit business, and well, all's well that ends well, I suppose. So in order to get these endings, you need to fix the arcade cabinets, which I already talked about. You also need to get all of Dad's items. All of Dad's items on nights 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5 actually has another item that you can get if you've collected all of Dad's items, which is a photograph with 2 blocked out silhouettes. And to the viewers at home, if you can manage to guess who these 2 mysterious individuals are, I will literally kill myself. And then of course, we have the last thing in order to get the 3-star ending, which is, yeah, the secret 8-bit minigames. These secret minigames are actually based off of the other stories from the Fazbear Fright series, so Fetch, To Be Beautiful, and Count the Ways are the minigames here, and they have the exact same aesthetic as FNaF 2. At least I think they do. I recognize the Golden Freddy sprite, but that's kind of all I remember. And basically, to unlock these, you kind of need to do, well, a little bit of some cryptic diving, I guess. To get the Fetch minigame, all you have to do is redeem 5 prize vouchers, which you've probably already done since I just talked about the whole, you know, redeeming prize vouchers for the stickers and the PS Vita earlier. And yeah, this is the 5th thing that you can get. Just note that you have to do this in Freddy's. Don't do it in Jeff's because it won't count. Because if you do it in Jeff's, well, I hope you like grinding because you're gonna have to do it just a little bit longer. The next one can be achieved by simply calling your mom on night 5. This is one of those I feel is a little too cryptic for its own good, because I just don't really see the average player of this game actually managing to figure this out on their own. So I think what could have been done instead is to simply have some kind of weird event happen every time you try to call your mom in Freddy's on every night. This would keep players engaged, and actually some would probably get curious enough to just keep calling the number. Each night it changes until you finally make it to night 5, where you get the minigame. Okay, before we move on to the last minigame, I just want to break off into a little tangent here because I ended up discovering something really cool about this game. Basically, there's a handful of phone numbers that you can actually call, and they are actually secret numbers. The number here is the one I want to point out because I'm not kidding, this is an official rendition of William Afton getting spring-locked. And honestly, hearing that audio brought me back to a different time, man. And then we have the most cryptic of all of them, the Count the Ways minigame. Now, to get this one, you have to interact with this specific gumball dispenser about 87 times. Who on God's green earth is actually figuring this out without using a guide? Like, this is basically on the same tier as trying to catch Regice in Pokemon Gen 3. But yeah, if you do manage to get all of those things done before night 5 or on night 5, you can get the 3-star ending, ending the game. And that was Into the Pit, and you know what? I actually really liked it. I would probably say this is definitely up there with some of the better Five Nights at Freddy's games out there. It's just kind of a bit of a shame that I feel like people don't really talk about this game as much as I think they should. Like, I almost feel like that no one talks about this game, and I understand why. It's mainly because I feel like Dead by Daylight just kind of stole the whole spotlight from this game. I don't think that should really deter people from talking about it, because I still think the game is pretty good. I mean, like, hell, I even ended up discovering that at one point this game was intended to be released on the Super Nintendo. Like, not like it's just a throwback kind of game, like on Steam or something. No, I mean this was supposed to be released on a Super Nintendo cartridge at one point, which I must say, that's actually really fucking cool, and I would have loved to see this come to fruition. I get why it didn't happen because, you know, no one owns a Super Nintendo anymore, but like, man, could you imagine actually playing this game on a Super Nintendo? That would be rad as fuck. So yeah, in summary, game's great. I really wish people would talk more about it, and I'd highly recommend it. Now let's actually talk about what happened on the 8th of August. Now, obviously, because Into the Pit ended up releasing about a day early, there needed to be something for the anniversary. So what we ended up receiving was, well, 4 scripts for the second FNaF movie. One of them were real and the rest were fake, and it was a community effort to figure out which one was the real one, to which I don't think anybody actually bothered to figure it out. I think we all just kind of ignored it and moved on. Now, obviously, this does correlate with the second Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which we did get a little bit of a sneak peek of when the anniversary was going on, because obviously we saw a lot of behind the scenes stuff from Jim Henson's Creature Shop regarding the FNaF 2 movie, and well, obviously. So the toy animatronics and the Wizards are going to take center stage here. Honestly, based on the behind the scenes shots and now that the trailers have released, yeah, honestly, these designs blow the first movie's animatronics completely out of the water for me. Not to say that the first movie's designs were bad or anything, far from it, they look great. It's just that they're a little inconsistent. Like, it's mainly designs like, I think the waists are a little too wide compared to the torso, which kind of tuck into it a little bit, which, to be completely honest, you have to have some insane level of autism to even notice these kinds of things, so good job I'm here, isn't it? So it feels insane that the FNaF 2 animatronics look practically identical to the ones I've seen all the way back in 2015. I will say though, I was a little bit worried about Mangle specifically, simply just by the nature of their design. I thought it would be kind of an absolute nightmare to get this actually working in a real animatronic, but I mean, they look fine in these shots, so I think they might have nailed it. Also, shout out to that one specific shot of Toy Bonnie with a knife. That's gotta be the funniest thing I think this franchise has ever come up with, so I really hope they do some obligatory Halloween reference with it. I think that'd be kinda cool. Now, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it isn't all peaches and cream, however, because I do have a small issue with one of the designs, and it's actually Withered Chica. Now, for those of you who might be new to this franchise, Withered Chica is considered by many people within this community to be one of the scariest animatronics that this series has ever made. And to be honest, you look at any picture of this character from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and yeah, you can immediately tell why. So when she got translated over into the movie, she looks fine. Like, I'd honestly say she looks pretty good, but there's one small problem, and you've probably already been able to tell. Yeah, her jaw is fixed for some reason. I don't know why they decided to do this, but I'm willing to bet that it's probably a very similar reason as to why Spring Bonnie has like weird proportions in the first film, and it's usually just so that they can actually fit someone inside the costume. But honestly though, it just kind of feels weird with having withered Chica without a broken jaw, because honestly, I'd say that the broken jaw was like one of the main attributes as to why people found her design to be that terrifying to begin with. It's not really much of a joy killer or anything, it's just something worth pointing out, and especially for people who like this design, it is going to be something that most of them end up pointing out. I just kind of think that simply removing the jaw just kind of removes a lot of the appeal of what made the character appealing to begin with, but at the end of the day, it's really not that important. I mean, the design looks good anyway, it's just a slightly less good withered Chica. I guess I could talk just a little bit about the new casting choices. Obviously, the ones from the original movie are there, so that's fine. Though there was one casting choice that really stuck out to a lot of people, and that was the casting of Skeet Ulrich, who, in case you don't know, was actually the original Ghostface from the first Scream film. So we now have both Ghostfaces in this film. It's like a Scream reunion if you think about it. Though, for whatever reason, they did not state who Skeet Ulrich would be playing in the film, and shit, it's Henry, isn't it? It's gonna be Henry. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the entire history of every single Five Nights at Freddy's anniversary. I sure do hope I made you feel old, because I felt old when I made this video, so at least we're even now. Yes, I'm aware I did miss a little bit of the 11th anniversary since, you know, obviously this video's coming out after that whole event happened. But to be honest, I already talked about most of it when I talked about Dead by Daylight, Secret of the Mimic, and the second FNaF film. So I'll just quickly lightning round through the last couple things here. We got some Art of Foxy from Steel Wall. Freddy Fazbear is now for some reason on Fanta cans now. Trust me, this is the best thing that has ever happened to this franchise. Oh, and they also decided to make a actual Five Nights at Freddy's horror attraction at Universal Studios Hollywood with Halloween Horror Nights. And for the first time ever, the horror attraction that is based on Five Nights at Freddy's is not actually a fire hazard. And to wrap things around to the second film, once again, Five Nights at Freddy's would collaborate with a fast food establishment to promote the film. That, of course, being Popeyes. What? You mean to tell me that the series that is based off of Chuck E. Cheese is collaborating with a fried chicken fast food establishment? Like, fucking riddle me that one, Batman. How does that even work? I mean, they didn't even bother throwing Chica on there. Like, if you wanted to do a Popeyes collab, at least throw Chica on there. Like, it would have made sense at least. Anyway, I'm sure you're probably wondering if I'm in the Five Nights at Freddy's 4-bedroom, how come there hasn't been a single nightmare animatronic that's tried to jump my ass? Well, to tell you the honest truth, ladies and gentlemen, I just locked the door. I'm being dead serious. If that kid knew how to lock the doors, his life would have been 10 billion times easier. Oh well, that's not my problem. Well, I may as well at least catch up on my sleep a little bit, so I'll see you on the next video. Good night. I forgot I didn't lock the doors because they don't have locks on them. Well, at least I put the sticky trap up there, so I'm fine.
Hey! Me bottle is scrumpy! Cut!